A seasoned pilot is barred from first class by her own airline. They don't recognize the captain beneath her civilian clothes. When the truth surfaces, the company that humiliated her will face a reckoning that changes everything. Some battles aren't fought in the sky. They're fought in boardrooms. The terminal hummed with the usual chaos of departure gates, rolling suitcases, boarding announcements, the smell of overpriced coffee mingling with jet fuel. Gate 37 was packed, travelers clustered around their phones, some already forming the impatient line that always formed too early. Amara Reed approached the podium with her boarding pass held loosely in one hand, a small carry-on trailing behind her. She wore a mustard-yellow blazer over a white blouse, jeans, and comfortable flats. Professional but relaxed. Off-duty. The gate agent looked up from her screen. Her smile was bright and automatic, until her eyes traveled from the boarding pass to Amara's face. The smile didn't disappear exactly, it froze. Then it shifted into something else entirely. "Can I help you?" The question came out sharp, skeptical. Amara handed over her pass and ID. First class. Seat 2A. The agent took them like they might be contaminated. She studied the ID for far too long, eyes flicking between the photo and Amara's face. "This is your ticket." "Yes." Amara kept her voice even, professional. She'd learned that tone in 1,000 cockpits. The agent typed something, frowned, typed again. Other passengers were watching now. A man in a business suit shifted his briefcase. A teenager nudged her mother. "There seems to be an issue with your reservation." The agent's voice carried across the gate area. "What kind of issue?" Amara's pulse kicked up, but her face remained calm. The agent didn't answer. Instead, she picked up a phone, turned slightly away and murmured into it. 30 seconds later, 2 security officers appeared, not rushing but purposeful. The kind of walk that said they'd been summoned for a problem. "Ma'am, we need you to step aside." The first officer gestured away from the podium. Passengers stared. Phones lifted. Recording lights blinked on. Amara didn't move. "I have a valid ticket and ID. What's the issue?" The gate agent leaned forward, voice low but not low enough. "This seat isn't for people like you." The words hung in the air like smoke after an explosion. 12 hours earlier, Amara had stood in her small apartment, packing a single bag for the weekend. The space was modest but hers, bookshelves full of aviation manuals, framed photos on the walls, and a captain's hat resting on a shelf near the window. Sunlight caught the gold wings pinned to it, making them glow. She'd earned those wings 8 years ago. Earned them the hard way, through sleepless nights studying weather patterns, endless simulator hours, and proving herself over and over in rooms full of men who assumed she was the flight attendant. Captain Amara Reed, Apex Airlines, 4,000 flight hours, 0 incidents, spotless record. This weekend was supposed to be different. Her niece Maya was graduating from high school in Atlanta, the first in their family to go straight to college. Amara had promised to be there, and she kept her promises. She'd used her own accumulated miles to book first class, a rare indulgence after 8 months of back-to-back routes, sleeping in airport hotels and surviving on vending machine meals. She zipped her bag and glanced at the photo on her nightstand. Her father in his pilot uniform, standing beside a small Cessna, hand on her shoulder. She'd been 16 then, skinny and nervous before her first solo flight. He'd told her something that day she'd never forgotten. Fear is just turbulence. You fly through it, not around it. Amara picked up her phone and texted Maya. "On my way. Can't wait to see you walk across that stage." 3 dots appeared immediately. "You better not cancel again, Auntie." Amara smiled. "Never, I promise." She grabbed her keys, her bag, her boarding pass already loaded on her phone. The flight left at 9. She'd land by noon, rent a car, and make it to the ceremony with hours to spare. Easy routine. She locked the door behind her, unaware that routine was about to shatter. By the time she reached the airport, dawn was breaking over the city. She moved through security with the practiced efficiency of someone who'd done this thousands of times. Shoes off, laptop out, liquids bagged. The TSA agent barely glanced at her ID. She bought coffee at a kiosk near her gate and settled into a chair to wait. Around her, travelers yawned and scrolled through phones. A family with 3 small children juggled snacks and stuffed animals. Business travelers typed frantically on laptops, chasing deadlines across time zones. Amara sipped her coffee and watched a plane taxi past the window. She recognized the model instantly. Boeing 737-800, same one she'd flown last Tuesday. She knew its quirks, its sounds, the way it handled crosswinds. She could probably draw its cockpit layout from memory. The boarding announcement crackled through the speakers. Group 1, first class and priority members. Amara stood, smoothed her blazer, and joined the line. The gate agent, a young woman with blonde hair pulled into a tight bun, smiled at the businessman ahead of her. "Welcome aboard, Mr. Harrison. Enjoy your flight." Then Amara stepped forward, and everything changed. The gate agent's fingers hovered over her keyboard, frozen mid-type. She looked at Amara's boarding pass, then at Amara, then back at the pass. Her expression shifted from confusion to something harder: suspicion. "This is first class." Not a question. "An accusation, yes," Amara said. "Seat 2A." The agent's jaw tightened. She picked up Amara's driver's license, holding it close to her face. "When did you book this?" 3 weeks ago." "Is there a problem?" Other passengers in line were getting restless. A man behind Amara sighed loudly. The agent ignored them all, focused entirely on Amara like she was a puzzle that didn't fit. "I need to verify something." She picked up the phone again without waiting for a response. Amara's chest tightened, but she kept her voice level. "I've shown you my ID and boarding pass. Both are valid." The agent held up one finger, wait, and turned her back, speaking in low tones. Amara caught fragments. "Unusual. Verification needed." Not sure how. The businessman behind her cleared his throat. "Is there a problem?" "Some of us have connections." The agent spun back around. "Sir, I'll be with you in just a moment." Then to Amara, "I'm going to need you to step aside while I sort this out." "Sort what out?" Amara's voice stayed calm, but her pulse was hammering now. She'd been flying for 15 years. She knew airline procedure inside and out. This wasn't protocol. This was something else. The security officers arrived then, 2 men in Navy uniforms, radios crackling at their hips. The first one, older with grey at his temples, positioned himself beside Amara. Not touching, but close. Too close. "Ma'am, we need you to come with us." "Why?" Amara didn't move. Around her, phones lifted. She could see herself reflected in a dozen screens, frozen in this moment. The gate agent's supervisor appeared, a thin woman in her 50s with reading glasses on a chain. She took one look at the situation, and her face hardened. "What's going on here?" The gate agent spoke quickly, words tumbling out. "This passenger has a first-class ticket, but I'm not sure. There may be an issue with payment or—" "There's no issue," Amara interrupted. "I'm an Apex employee. I booked this ticket with my own miles 3 weeks ago." The supervisor's eyebrows lifted. "You work for Apex?" "Yes, I'm a pilot. Captain, actually." Silence. The supervisor's expression didn't change. She looked at the gate agent, who shrugged slightly, then back at Amara. "Do you have employee credentials?" "They're in my bag." "In your system, my employee number is A7293. The supervisor made no move to check. Instead, she stepped closer, voice dropping to a whisper that still carried. "Ma'am, we have standards to maintain in our first-class cabin. I'm sure you understand. Perhaps we can find you a more appropriate accommodation in the main cabin." The words landed like a slap. Amara's hands curled into fists at her sides, but her face remained perfectly composed. Around them, the gate area had gone silent. Everyone was watching, recording. The businessman from the line spoke up, his voice dripping with impatience. "Can we just board? This is ridiculous." The supervisor nodded at the gate agent. "Continue boarding. We'll handle this separately." "I'm not going anywhere," Amara said quietly. "I have a valid ticket. I'm getting on that plane." The older security officer touched her elbow. "Ma'am, you're disrupting the boarding process. Come with us, or we'll have to remove you." Amara looked at him, then at the supervisor, then at the gate agent who wouldn't meet her eyes. She thought of Maya, waiting for her in Atlanta. She thought of her father's wings gathering dust on her shelf. She thought of every time she'd swallowed indignity to keep flying. Not this time. "Fine," she said. "Call your station manager. I want to speak to someone in charge." The supervisor's smile was thin and cold. "I am in charge. And I'm telling you, this ticket isn't valid. Security, please escort her away from the gate." They walked her down the jet bridge like a criminal. Not to the plane, but to a small office tucked behind the gate desk. Grey walls, flickering fluorescent lights, a single chair that looked like it belonged in an interrogation room. The security officers positioned themselves at the door. Not guarding, exactly, but not leaving either, Amara sat. Her hands shook slightly, so she pressed them flat against her thighs. Breathe, just breathe. She'd trained for emergencies 1,000 times. Engine failures, hydraulic malfunctions, weather crises. Stay calm, assess, respond. But this wasn't turbulence. This was something she couldn't navigate with instruments and checklists. Through the small window, she could see passengers boarding her flight. The businessman strode past without a glance. A family with young children. An elderly couple holding hands. All of them welcomed aboard without question. Without suspicion. The supervisor's words echoed in her skull. "This seat isn't for people like you. More appropriate accommodation. Standards to maintain." She'd heard versions of that speech before. In flight school, when an instructor suggested she'd be better suited for regional airlines. In her first cockpit, when a co-pilot asked if she was sure she was qualified. In 1,000 small moments, where her competence was questioned before she'd even touched the controls. But she'd never been barred from a flight. Not like this. Not by her own airline. Amara pulled out her phone with trembling fingers. She should call Maya, explain why she'd be late, or maybe wouldn't make it at all. But the thought of saying those words made her throat tight. Instead, she opened her text messages. Her father's last message to her, sent 3 years ago before he died. "Fly high, baby girl. Don't let anyone clip your wings." She stared at the words until they blurred. Outside, the jet bridge door closed. Her flight was boarding without her. The plane she'd flown dozens of times. The route she knew by heart. The seat she'd paid for with miles earned through years of service. Gone. Amara closed her eyes. The anger came then, hot and sharp, flooding through her chest like engine fire. But beneath it was something colder, clearer. This wasn't just about a seat. This was about every black pilot who'd been told they didn't belong in the cockpit. Every person who'd been deemed inappropriate for first class. Every time someone in power decided that dignity was something you earned by fitting their narrow definition of acceptable. She opened her eyes. Her hands had stopped shaking. The supervisor appeared in the doorway holding a clipboard. "Ms. Reed, we've reviewed your ticket. Unfortunately, there appears to be an irregularity. We can rebook you on a later flight, economy class, or issue a refund." Amara stood slowly. "I want to speak to your station manager. Now." "I've already explained. Now." 23 years ago, Amara's father had taken her to a small airfield outside the city. She'd been 10 years old, skinny and uncertain, staring up at the planes like they were creatures from another world. He'd smiled at her expression and said, "Want to go up?" She'd nodded, too nervous to speak. They'd climbed into a tiny Cessna 172, and her father had handed her headphones that were too big for her head. The engine roared to life, vibrating through her bones. Then they were moving, faster and faster, the ground falling away beneath them. Amara had gripped her seat, terrified and exhilarated. "Look," her father had said, pointing at the horizon. "That's freedom, baby girl. Up here nobody can tell you where you can't go." He'd been the first black pilot hired by the city's commuter airline in Sioux, 1985. He'd told her stories about the early days, The passengers who'd refused to fly with him, the colleagues who'd sabotaged his equipment, the constant, grinding pressure to be twice as good, just to be considered half as competent. But he'd never quit. He'd logged 15,000 hours before he retired, trained dozens of pilots, and earned a reputation as one of the best aviators in the region. "They'll try to ground you," he'd told her years later, when she'd announced she wanted to be a pilot. "They'll say you don't fit, that you don't belong. You fly anyway. You hear me? You fly anyway." She'd carried those words through every obstacle, through the flight instructor, who told her women lacked the spatial reasoning for flying, through the airline recruiter, who'd suggested she'd be happier as a flight attendant, through the Czech pilot who'd failed her first certification exam for not inspiring confidence, then past the white male candidate who'd made the exact same mistakes. Amara had filed a complaint. She'd retaken the exam with a different evaluator. She'd passed with perfect scores. She'd earned her commercial license at 24, first officer at 26, captain at 32, one of the youngest in Apex's fleet, and one of only 17 black women to hold captain rank at a major U.S. carrier. 4,000 hours in command. Not a single incident, 0 passenger complaints about her flying. Perfect safety record, and now she sat in a grey room being told she didn't belong in first class on her own airline. Her phone buzzed. A text from Maya. "Flight landed yet? Can't wait to see you." Amara's jaw clenched. She typed quickly. "Small delay. Be there soon. Promise." She wouldn't break this promise. Not to Maya, not to her father, not to herself. The door opened again. A different man this time, older, wearing a polo shirt with an Apex logo. Station manager, probably. He looked uncomfortable, like he'd been pulled from something more important. "Miss Reed, I'm Dan Foster, Station Operations Manager. I understand there's been some confusion about your ticket." Amara stood to meet his eyes. "No confusion, discrimination." His expression flickered. "Now let's not jump to, I'm Captain Amara Reed, employee number A7293. I've flown for this airline for 8 years. I booked a first-class ticket with my own miles. Your staff accused me of fraud, called security, and barred me from boarding. I want to know why." Foster's face went pale. You're a captain. Check your system." Foster fumbled for his tablet, fingers clumsy on the screen. He typed something, waited, then his eyes went wide. Oh God, Captain Reed, I am so sorry. There's been a terrible misunderstanding." "What misunderstanding?" Amara's voice was ice. "The gate agent didn't realize you were an employee. She thought, what did she think?" Foster's mouth opened and closed. No words came out. Behind him, the supervisor from earlier appeared in the doorway, her face drained of color. Amara didn't wait for an answer. She pulled out her phone, opened the Apex employee portal, and navigated to her profile. Captain Amara Reed, Commercial Pilot Certificate. Type ratings for 737, 757, 767. 8 years of service. Commendations for safety and leadership. 4,000 hours in command. She turned the screen toward Foster. "This is who you just removed from a flight. Captain Reed, please, we can fix this. We'll get you on the next flight, first class, upgraded to—" "I don't want an upgrade. I want an explanation." Foster looked at the supervisor. She looked at the floor. Neither of them spoke. Amara's pulse hammered, but her mind was suddenly clear. She opened her email app, scrolled back 3 weeks, and found her booking confirmation. Then she opened another email, one she'd received 2 months ago from Apex's internal communications. Subject line: Updated security protocols for first-class verification. She'd skimmed it at the time, mostly concerned with flight operations updates, but now she read it carefully, scanning the dense paragraphs of corporate language. And there, buried in Section 4, she found it. Gate agents are instructed to use heightened scrutiny for first-class passengers whose appearance or documentation raises potential flags. Verification protocols include secondary ID checks, payment source confirmation, and supervisor approval for irregular bookings. irregular, appearance flags. She read it again, the words clicking into place like a pre-flight checklist. The policy didn't say black passengers, it didn't say people of color, but it didn't have to. The intent was coded in every line. Her hands went cold. She kept scrolling through her inbox. Another email from 6 months ago, first-class booking anomalies. Another from a year ago, addressing suspicious upgrade patterns, each one carefully worded, each one building a system designed to target passengers who didn't fit someone's idea of who belonged in first class. Amara looked up at Foster. How many other employees have been removed from flights because of these protocols? That's not... How many passengers of color have been questioned, delayed, or denied boarding because you've decided their tickets are irregular? Foster's face went from pale to gray. Captain Reed, I assure you this policy isn't about... About what? Say it, he couldn't or wouldn't. Amara's phone buzzed. Her flight was departing. She could see it through the window, backing away from the gate. The plane she should have been on. The promise she'd made to Maya, breaking apart in real time. But something else was crystallizing in her chest. Not just anger, clarity. She pulled up her phone's recording app and hit record. Mr. Foster, for the record, I'm Captain Amara Reed, employed by Apex Airlines for 8 years. I was denied boarding on Flight 2847 this morning, despite having a valid ticket and proper identification. Can you confirm that your gate staff used Apex's first-class verification protocols when making that decision? Foster's eyes widened. Captain Reed, I don't think... Can you confirm? Her voice was steady, relentless. He looked at the supervisor. She shook her head slightly. He looked back at Amara, and she saw the exact moment he realized he was trapped. Those protocols are under review, he said finally, but they were in effect this morning, when I was removed from my flight. Captain Reed, please, we can resolve this. Let's discuss this privately. We'll compensate you for any... Amara stopped the recording. I don't want compensation. I want the names of everyone involved in this decision. I want copies of all relevant policies. And I want documentation of every similar incident in the past 12 months. Foster's face went rigid. I don't have the authority to... Then find someone who does. Foster disappeared for 20 minutes. When he returned, he had a woman with him, sleek emerald green suit, silver hair cut sharp at her shoulders, expression carefully neutral. Corporate crisis management? Amara recognized the type instantly. Captain Reed, I'm Victoria Nash, Regional Director of Customer Experience. I've been briefed on the situation. Her voice was smooth, practiced. First, let me offer our sincerest apologies. This should never have happened, but it did happen. Amara stayed seated, forcing Nash to stand above her. A small power play, but deliberate. Nash pulled a chair close, sitting at eye level. You're absolutely right. And we take full responsibility. I've already spoken with the gate supervisor and agent involved. They've been placed on administrative leave pending a full investigation. Investigation into what? Into whether proper protocols were followed. Amara leaned forward. Your protocols are the problem. I've read them. They're designed to target passengers who don't look like they belong in first class. That's not a misunderstanding. That's policy. Nash's expression flickered. Just for a second. Our protocols are designed to prevent fraud and ensure passenger safety. Don't. Amara's voice cut through the corporate speak. I've been flying for 15 years. I know safety protocols. This wasn't about safety. This was about bias dressed up as procedure. Nash folded her hands. Captain Reed, I understand you're upset. You have every right to be. What happened today was unacceptable, and we want to make this right. We're prepared to offer you a full refund, 20,000 bonus miles, and guaranteed first-class seating for the next year. We'll also book you on our next flight to Atlanta. First class, of course, departing in 90 minutes. Amara studied her. Nash's face was sympathetic, concerned, perfectly calibrated to convey regret without admitting liability. She'd probably used this exact expression 100 times before. Smooth over the incident. Throw money at the problem. Make it disappear quietly. What about the other passengers? Amara asked. I'm sorry. The other passengers who've been profiled, questioned, humiliated by these policies. Do they get miles too? Or do they just get to swallow the humiliation and move on? Nash's jaw tightened slightly. We're committed to reviewing our procedures to ensure this doesn't happen again. When? I'll personally oversee... When? Amara repeated. Give me a timeline. When will the discriminatory protocols be suspended? When will staff be retrained? When will you acknowledge that this isn't an isolated incident? The room went silent. Nash glanced at Foster, who looked like he wanted to disappear through the floor. When she turned back to Amara, the sympathetic mask had slipped. What remained was harder. Corporate. Captain Reed, we're trying to resolve this situation in a way that's beneficial for everyone. But if you're looking for some kind of public admission or systemic overhaul based on one incident, I'm afraid that's not something we can commit to. One incident. Amara smiled, but there was no warmth in it. How many others have there been? I don't have those numbers. Find them. Nash stood abruptly. Captain Reed, I'm offering you a generous resolution. I strongly suggest you accept it. Otherwise things could become complicated. There it was. The threat beneath the apology. Accept the silence money or face consequences. Amara stood too, meeting Nash's eyes. Complicated for who? Nash's expression hardened. You're still an Apex employee. I'd hate to see this situation impact your career. The words hung in the air like smoke. Amara felt her pulse spike, but her voice stayed level. Is that a threat? It's a reality. Sometimes the best resolution is the quiet one. Amara picked up her phone, her boarding pass, her bag. Book me on the next flight, first class, and get me the documentation I requested. Nash's smile was thin. Of course. We'll have you in Atlanta before noon. But as Amara walked out of that gray room, she knew exactly what would happen next. They'd put her on a plane. They'd smile and apologize. They'd bury the incident in paperwork and legal agreements. And tomorrow another black woman would be pulled aside at another gate, questioned about another ticket, told she didn't belong. Not this time. The flight to Atlanta was quiet. They'd upgraded Amara to seat 1A, the best seat in first class, as if luxury could erase humiliation. The flight attendants were overly attentive, their smiles tight with awareness. Everyone knew. The whole crew probably knew. Amara accepted sparkling water and declined the warm nuts. She stared out the window at clouds that looked like cotton pulled apart. She'd flown through formations like these 1,000 times, knew their patterns, their altitudes, their meanings. Up here everything made sense. There were rules, procedures, logic. Down there the rules were different. Her phone buzzed with an email notification. She almost ignored it. Probably Nash sending the flight vouchers, the hush money dressed up as compensation. But when she opened it, her breath caught. The sender was listed as Apex HR. Subject line, Administrative Action Required. Captain Reed. Following this morning's incident at Gate 37, Apex Airlines is conducting a comprehensive review of the events. As standard procedure during internal investigations involving employee conduct, you are hereby placed on administrative leave effective immediately. You are required to surrender your flight credentials and refrain from operating any Apex aircraft until the investigation concludes. This is not disciplinary action. This is a precautionary measure to ensure an objective review. You will continue to receive full pay and benefits during this period. We expect the investigation to conclude within 30 days. Please contact HR within 24 hours to arrange credential return. Sincerely, Human Resources Department, Apex Airlines. Amara read it twice. 3 times. The words didn't change. Administrative leave, investigation, employee conduct. They weren't investigating the gate agents. They weren't reviewing discriminatory policies. They were investigating her for what? Having the audacity to demand answers. For refusing to accept their quiet payoff. Her hands started shaking again. She pressed them flat against her armrests, feeling the leather cool against her palms. Around her, passengers sipped drinks and scrolled through phones, unaware that her entire career was being dismantled at 35,000 feet. She thought about calling someone. Her union rep, a lawyer, but who could she trust? Apex had resources, connections, entire legal teams dedicated to protecting the company. She was one pilot, one voice. Easy to silence, her phone buzzed again. A text from her union representative. Heard about the situation. Need to talk ASAP. Don't make any statements or sign anything. Then another text, this one from a blocked number. Think carefully before you escalate this. Careers can be fragile things. Amara stared at the screen until it went dark. She could see her reflection in the black glass, exhausted, angry, alone. Her father's voice echoed in her memory. They'll try to ground you. Well, they were succeeding. The plane began its descent into Atlanta. Amara watched the city rise up to meet them. Highways and buildings and the distant gleam of the airport. Maya was down there somewhere in her graduation gown, probably checking her phone every few minutes to see when her aunt would arrive. Amara closed her eyes. When she opened them, something had shifted. The fear was still there, coiled tight in her chest. But beneath it was something harder, colder. They wanted her to stay quiet, to accept their money and disappear. But she'd been flying through turbulence her whole life, and she knew one fundamental truth about storms. You don't survive by avoiding them. You survive by flying straight through. She opened her phone and scrolled through her contacts until she found a name she hadn't called in years. Jennifer Okafor, civil rights attorney. They'd met at a National Organization of Black Pilots conference 3 years ago. Jennifer had given Amara her card and said, "If you ever need someone who fights back, call me." Amara had kept the card. Just in case, she typed out a message. Need to talk. Discrimination case. High profile. Are you available? 3 dots appeared immediately. Then always. Call me tonight. Amara looked out the window one more time. The ground was close now. Real, solid. She was done flying for Apex. But the fight had just begun. Amara made it to Maya's graduation with 15 minutes to spare. She sat in the back row of the auditorium, still wearing her mustard yellow blazer, watching her niece walk across the stage in a royal blue gown. Maya's smile was brilliant, infectious. When she spotted Amara in the crowd, she waved so enthusiastically she nearly tripped on her hem. Amara waved back, smiled, clapped until her palms hurt. Inside, she was hollow. After the ceremony, Maya threw her arms around her. "You made it. I was so worried you'd cancel again." "Never," Amara whispered. "I promised." But the promise felt fragile now. How many more could she keep? 3 days later, Amara sat in her apartment staring at her captain's hat on the shelf. The gold wings caught the afternoon light, but they looked dull somehow, tarnished. Her phone sat silent on the coffee table. No calls from Apex, no updates on the investigation, just silence. Her union rep had called yesterday with bad news. "They're slow-walking this. My contact in HR says they're building a case, not against the gate staff, against you. Insubordination, disrupting operations, creating a hostile work environment." "I was the one removed from a flight," Amara had said. "I know, but they're flipping the narrative. Saying you threatened staff, refused to cooperate, made a scene that disrupted hundreds of passengers. They've got witness statements from the gate area. From who? They won't say. But Amara, listen, they're good at this. They've buried complaints before. If you push this, they'll push back harder. Maybe it's better to take the settlement and move on. Move on, like it never happened. Like the next black woman at that gate wouldn't face the same scrutiny. Like discrimination was just the cost of doing business." Amara had thanked him and hung up. Now she sat in the quiet of her apartment, surrounded by everything she'd built, the manuals, the certifications, the photos of her standing beside planes she'd commanded. Her whole identity was wrapped up in those wings, Captain, pilot, aviator, and they were taking it away. Her phone buzzed. A text from a number she didn't recognize. Captain Reed, this is Marcus Chen, First Officer Apex. Heard about what happened. I want you to know you're not alone. There are others. She stared at the message for a long time before typing back. Others. 5 of us. All people of color. Similar incidents. We've been documenting. If you're willing to fight, so are we. Amara's hands trembled as she read the words. She wasn't alone. She'd thought she was one voice against a system designed to silence her. But there were others. Others who'd swallowed the same humiliation. Others who'd been told to accept the quiet resolution. She thought of her father's wings gathering dust. She thought of Maya's smile at graduation. She thought of every young black pilot coming up behind her, hoping the path would be easier. It wouldn't be. Not unless someone made it easier. Amara picked up her phone and called Jennifer Okafor. Jennifer's office was in a high-rise downtown floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. Amara sat across from her, 5 other pilots arranged in chairs around the conference table. Marcus Chen, Latoya Williams, Ahmed Hassan, Rosa Martinez, David Okoro, all Apex employees, all with stories. Jennifer stood at the head of the table, a legal pad in front of her covered with notes. She was exactly as Amara remembered, sharp suit, sharper eyes, the kind of presence that filled a room. Let's start with the pattern, Jennifer said. Amara, you were denied boarding based on verification protocols. Marcus, tell us what happened to you. Marcus leaned forward. He was young, maybe 28, with tired eyes that suggested he'd been carrying this weight for a while. Last year, I was flying standby to San Francisco, using employee benefits. Gate agent said my ID looked questionable, pulled me aside, called a supervisor, made me verify my employment 3 times. I missed the flight. Had to book a hotel and fly out the next day. Did you file a complaint? Jennifer asked. With HR, they said it was a misunderstanding, gave me a voucher and told me to move on. Latoya spoke next. I've been passed over for captain promotion twice. Both times, the white male first officers with fewer flight hours got promoted instead. When I asked why, they said I needed more experience. I have 6,000 hours. Ahmed's story was different but familiar. I was accused of intimidating a flight attendant. She'd made a comment about not trusting foreign pilots. I reported it. Next thing I know, I'm under investigation for creating a hostile work environment. Rosa, David, each of them had a story, each one slightly different. Training discrimination, promotion delays, passenger complaints upheld without investigation, sudden performance reviews that appeared only after they'd raised concerns. Jennifer listened to all of them, taking notes, her expression growing darker with each account. When they finished, she set down her pen. This isn't coincidence. This is institutional. Apex has a pattern of discrimination that spans years. They've built a system designed to protect themselves. Quiet resolutions, NDAs, administrative leave as punishment for speaking up. But here's the thing about patterns. Once you document them, they become evidence. Evidence for what? Amara asked. For a class action lawsuit. Civil rights violation, hostile work environment, discrimination in hiring, promotion, and service provision. We go after the whole system, not just one incident. The room went quiet. Amara could feel the weight of the decision pressing down on all of them. This wasn't just about seeking justice. This was about putting their careers on the line, their livelihoods, everything they'd worked for. Marcus spoke first. If we do this, they'll come after us. All of us, probably, Jennifer said. They'll drag it out, try to discredit you, make your lives difficult. That's how corporations fight back. But here's what they don't expect, solidarity. When you stand together, you're harder to break. Latoya crossed her arms. What do we need to win? Documentation. Every email, every complaint, every performance review. Witness testimony. Expert analysis of their policies, and most importantly, courage. because this is going to be ugly before it gets better. Amara thought about the email she'd found, the verification protocols, the coded language, the careful construction of bias disguised as procedure. She thought about Maya's graduation, the promise she'd made to show up, to not disappear. She thought about her father's voice. "You fly anyway, I'm in," she said. One by one, the others nodded. Marcus, Latoya, Ahmed, Rosa, David. Jennifer smiled. "Then let's go to work." The deposition room was sterile. White walls, recording equipment, a long table separating Apex's legal team from Jennifer and her clients. 6 months had passed since that meeting in Jennifer's office. 6 months of document requests, legal filings, media attention, and mounting pressure. Apex had tried everything. Offered settlements, threatened countersuits, leaked stories to the press about disgruntled employees, and false allegations. But Jennifer had built an airtight case, brick by documented brick. Now they sat across from Victoria Nash, Dan Foster, and 3 corporate attorneys. The gate agent, Jessica Brennan, sat at the far end, looking like she wanted to be anywhere else. Jennifer opened her laptop and pulled up the first exhibit. "Let's start with Apex's first-class verification protocols. Ms. Nash, you told Captain Reed these protocols were designed to prevent fraud. Is that correct?" Nash's attorney leaned forward. "My client doesn't need to answer that," Jennifer smiled. "It's on the record." Multiple witnesses heard it. "Let's move on." She clicked to the next slide, an internal email from 2 years ago. "This is from Apex's security director to all regional managers. Subject line, addressing first-class irregularities." I'll read the relevant section. "Gate agents should use heightened scrutiny when passengers appear inconsistent with typical first-class demographics." She let that hang in the air. Define typical first-class demographics. Ms. Nash, Nash's jaw tightened. That email was taken out of context. Was it? Jennifer pulled up another email, then another, each one carefully worded. Each one building a policy that, while never explicitly stating race, created a system of profiling. The court reporter's fingers flew across her keyboard. Jennifer turned to Jessica Brennan. "Ms. Brennan, you were the gate agent who denied Captain Reed boarding. When you saw her ticket, what was your first thought?" Brennan looked at her attorney, who nodded slightly. I thought it seemed unusual." "Unusual how?" She didn't look like most first-class passengers." "What do first-class passengers look like?" Silence. Brennan's face went red. Jennifer didn't push. She just let the silence stretch until everyone in the room understood exactly what was unspoken. Then she pulled up security footage from that day. The video played in grainy black and white, Amara approaching the gate, calm and professional. The agent's face changing. The security officers arriving. The crowd watching. "This is what discrimination looks like," Jennifer said quietly. "Not fire hoses and slurs. Policies and procedures. Heightened scrutiny. Irregularities. Code words for bias." She clicked to the next exhibit, a chart showing complaint patterns. 47 incidents over 3 years. 43 involved passengers of color. All first class. All resolved with vouchers and NDAs. 47 people told you there was a problem. You silenced them. You paid them off. You protected your image instead of your passengers. Nash's attorney stood. "This is speculation." "It's data," Jennifer cut him off. "It's pattern. It's proof." She turned to Amara. "Captain Reed, tell us what happened after you refused the settlement." Amara had prepared for this moment, practiced her testimony until it was smooth and clear. But now, sitting in that room, facing the people who'd tried to ground her, emotion crept into her voice despite her best efforts. "They placed me on administrative leave. Called it an investigation, but it wasn't about the gate agents. It was about me. Punishment for speaking up." She looked directly at Nash. "You threatened my career to protect yours." Nash's face was stone. Jennifer pulled up one final document. This is Captain Reed's performance record. 8 years, 4,000 flight hours, 0 incidents, 0 complaints, spotless safety record. She was denied a seat on her own airline, then punished for objecting, because she didn't look like she belonged. The room was silent except for the hum of the recording equipment. Jennifer closed her laptop. Apex Airlines built a system of discrimination and called it protocol. They silenced complaints and called it resolution. They punished victims and called it procedure. That ends today. The settlement came 6 weeks later, $12 million, split among the 6 plaintiffs, and allocated to policy reform. It made national news. Headlines about discrimination, accountability, systemic change. Apex's CEO resigned. Nash was reassigned to a non-customer-facing role. The verification protocols were suspended pending complete overhaul, but for Amara, the real victory was quieter. She sat in her apartment with the signed settlement papers on her coffee table and her phone showing 3 missed calls from news producers. Outside her window the sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of burnt orange and gold. Her captain's hat still sat on the shelf. But it didn't look dull anymore. Maya had called earlier, voice bright with pride. "Auntie, you're everywhere. Everyone at school is talking about it. You're like famous." "Not famous," Amara had said. "Just heard." Same thing. Maybe it was. 2 weeks later, Amara received an email from Delta Airlines. They'd heard about her case. They were impressed by her record. They'd like to offer her a position, captain, international routes, full benefits, and a promise of 0 tolerance for discrimination. She accepted. On her last day at her apartment, packing boxes for the move to her new base city, Amara picked up her father's old photo. He stood beside that little Cessna, hand on her teenage shoulder, pride in his eyes. She'd kept the promise after all. She'd flown through the turbulence. And on the other side she'd found more than vindication. She'd found her voice. 6 months after the settlement, Amara stood in a hangar speaking to 30 young pilots, most of them women, most of them people of color. They were part of a foundation she'd started with part of her settlement money, Wings of Change. Training, mentorship, advocacy. She looked out at their faces, saw her younger self reflected there. Nervous, hopeful, uncertain if they truly belonged in cockpits that had been closed to people like them for so long. "They'll tell you that you don't fit," she said, "that you're irregular, that there's something about you that doesn't match their idea of what a pilot should look like. They'll use policies and procedures and coded language to push you out." She paused, letting her words settle. "But here's what I learned. Dignity isn't given, it's claimed. Justice isn't granted, it's fought for. And change doesn't happen when we accept silence. It happens when we refuse it." One of the students raised a hand. "What if we're scared?" Amara smiled. "Then you're normal. Fear is just turbulence. You fly through it, not around it." Her father's words, now hers to pass on. That night, Amara stood in the cockpit of a Delta 767, preparing for a transatlantic flight. The controls felt familiar under her hands. The instruments glowed in the dim light. Outside, the runway stretched into darkness, lights marking the path forward. She thought about the girl who'd first climbed into a tiny Cessna with her father, the woman who'd been told she didn't belong, the captain who'd refused to accept that verdict. The tower cleared her for takeoff. Amara pushed the throttles forward and felt the engines surge. The plane accelerated, faster and faster, until the ground fell away and there was only sky. Up here she was free. She'd always been free, now everyone knew it.